Hey everyone, today I'm going to be comparing two different disciplines of race cars. I'm going to be telling you how they actually differ in terms of driving and racing experience. So the two different disciplines we're going to be looking at is NASCAR and Formula Cars. Now obviously from the outside they look completely different aesthetically. One car is extremely small, they're known to be extremely light. You can fit in it, your head's exposed, there's no roof. Rather the other car there is a roof, they're much bigger cars, so they look very different right from the outset. They drive a lot differently too, so with one car being extremely heavy and the other car being extremely light, that makes a big difference in actually how you drive the car. As soon as you hit the brakes on a single seater, the thing will stop instantly because it doesn't have to stop that much. It's basically you, some wheel suspension, the wings, but there's not that much weight carrying it, into the corner. Rather with a NASCAR, it's a much bigger car, bigger engine, bigger everything. So carrying that weight into the corner is going to make a very big difference to how you drive it. You're going to have to, what we call, load the car up more, which is basically as you're braking, you'll be braking earlier than you would in a single seater. And then as you turn the wheel, you turn it a little bit initially just to load up the tyre before we then put in the rest of the input. You do that as well with a single seater, but it's exaggerated more in a NASCAR. The whole process is a lot slower due to the nature of the weight carrying behind it. Also, single seaters, as many of you may know, have big wings on them. Even right down to F4 level, they've got wings on the cars. This is giving what we call aero performance, and the wind as it drives along pushes the car into the ground, basically increasing the cornering speeds. Now in NASCAR, when you have a look at a NASCAR, it doesn't have big wings. It has a very small splitter on the front and a very small rear wing. Believe it or not, the rear wing especially actually does make a lot of difference. You can really feel it when you're driving it, that as soon as that rear wing is gone, suddenly the car is a lot looser on the rear and you're suddenly going quite a bit faster in the straight line without the drag. The single seater though is a lot more dependent on that. If that rear wing goes, it's basically race over. The NASCAR, you might be able to scrape something out of it or keep going around. With a single seater, it's game over, race done. The F4 rear wing types, GB4 rear wing types, it's not as reliant as you will get up the ladder, but it still makes a huge amount of difference, and it's crucial in terms of setup where you're setting that rear wing. With the rear wing of a NASCAR, there's no difference. It's just one plane and that's it. So big differences there. And then you've got, as I say, the weight that I've already spoken about. Also visibility being extremely different. In a NASCAR, again, closed cockpit, so you've got pillars, you've got a windscreen. Rather a single seater, you're not going to have any of that. Modern single seaters now have the halo, but if you're looking directly at the halo, then you're doing something very wrong. You need to be looking a lot more further ahead through in the corners, so the halo kind of just disappears when you're actually looking at what you should be looking at. So that's in terms of driving experience. Now in terms of actually prepping the car on your out laps, very different again. So with a single seater being much lighter, it means it takes more time to get heat in the tyre. So basically you'll come out, you'll do 2 laps or so building the tyre up, building the heat in. The weight of the car is going to limit that, so you have to really put a lot of load on the straight, weaving the car to generate that heat for when you're then starting to push on, especially in that quali mode, to get the best out of the tyre. The NASCAR, a little bit different. It's a much heavier, because the car's so much heavier. The tyres are bigger with everything being scaled up. It's actually a lot easier to get heat in the tyre with the weight being pushed into it. So because of this, you're then trying to be a bit more, again, delicate with it almost. Like with a single seater, it's quite aggressive weaving, as you're building it up to get that heat into it. Rather the NASCAR tyre will naturally come up anyway. As soon as you come out the pit box and you're already driving at a semi-speed, it will naturally just start putting heat into the tyre. Also, race weekends, with the way they work different on the structure, GB3 you get 2 sets of tyres for the whole weekend from qualifying to race 3. GB4 you get a set of tyres and a half, so that half tyre can be used in between, and then much shorter races. The NASCAR, you'll have qualifying, which is usually about 10 minutes long. You then have 2 races which both last around 45 minutes. So because of this, and with the rules, the tyres have to last from qualifying to the end of that second race. They've really got to keep going. So if you go out the pit box and you're quite aggressive on the tyre straight away, you'll be taking the life out of it when you need it for the end of that race too. So your prep is a lot more real gradual with it. You know, you won't do as much weaving, you just sort of go through the corners, gently building up that load, building up the time, as you then get quicker and quicker, and then you'll be hitting it. Warm-up laps of the race as well, again, depends on how you basically play it in terms of strategy of the race. In the single-seater, it's very simple, just get the heat in and go. Qualifying is so important in single-seater racing that if you qualify on pole, the chances are you're going to be on the podium. You know, and the more you've got the ladder where dirty air from the aero getting involved is going to be more crucial. So it's so vital that first lap is incredible and the tyres are as warm as they're going to be to really pull away, get settled into a rhythm. If you're on cold tyres and the car behind you on warm tyres, that's a good opportunity for them to be able to pass you. In the NASCAR, things work a lot differently. You haven't got that dirty air when it comes to racing. So because of that, you've got this slipstream, this tow effect, and the car from braking, holding the air in front of you, pulling you along, and you don't lose out in the corner. When I was doing my debut NASCAR race in Italy, the circuit Vallelunga, the first couple turns are extremely fast. And I remember when I was behind other cars, you'd actually feel the car, even though it's a corner, still getting a slipstream effect through the corner. Like the car's actually getting pulled along with slipstream through the corner when I was behind another car. That's how much of an effect it makes. Obviously at slower corners, medium speed corners, hairpin chicanes, it won't be that big of an effect, but this corner where, you know, virtually was basically a lift, like you just felt the car still getting pulled along behind another car in the slipstream. Single seaters, you really don't have that. You basically, as long as if you're flat out on the throttle, you'll have the slipstream, but as soon as you get to corners, you start to feel that dirty air. So again, because of that, with the tyre, with the way you prep it for the race, it basically means that when you start the race, you might be thinking, maybe I'm going to hold back on these early laps, I'm not going to be as aggressive, I'm not going to try and make up the places because I want to have the tyres at the end to be pushing people at the end in front of me, or to have some tyres to defend. Rather, other people might be thinking that they want to be very aggressive and, you know, at the start of the race, make up those places and then hope they can hang on to it at the end when the tyre drops off, which is extremely difficult to do because, as I just said, you haven't got dirty air to actually help protect you. So because of this, the racing's a lot more closer. You see it a lot in NASCAR. It quite often will go down to the final lap. I know you can say, well, they go on ovals, but the European series, which is the series I compete in, is only one oval, but most of it is circuit racing, like you'd be used to in Europe. So because of that, you know, looking after your tyres early on in the race can really pay dividends to the end, unless you're extremely confident in your ability to defend, which, you know, again, it's quite cool when a racing series has these kind of options of how you basically play the strategy. So what I'm going to do now is get 2 laps up around the same circuit. The circuit is going to be Brands Hatch Indy, and I'm going to show you a NASCAR compared to a Formula car. So the laps are going to be from when I competed in both the European NASCAR series, the Euro NASCAR, and the British Formula 3 series, now known as GB3. So you'll really get to see here the difference between aero and mechanical grip, and what you do as a driver to get the best out of both of these cars. So starting the lap here, you can see into turn 1 how different these cars are with the aero platform. As they turn in, the Formula 3 car can get close to the curb, but the NASCAR actually rides up on it. That's because it's so much bigger and so much softer, it can really hit that curb, but the single seats are much stiffer and run much lower to the ground. And that difference in aero as well, if they hit the curb there, it goes into a spin. Into the next corner again, you see this line difference with the Formula car going for a later apex but having an earlier higher minimum. The NASCAR hugging it much tighter, having a lot more power to get off the corner. Again here, the NASCAR being able to ride up the curve, and the single seater can't do that, and on the exit, the NASCAR can take much more of the curve on the exit of the corner. The single seater would just bottom out and it would pull it off the circuit. In through here, the single seater is completely flat out, gets close to the curb but not on it. Again, the NASCAR really riding the curve. And again through the last corner, a little bit difference in variation of line here, trying to keep that speed through it. This is probably the most similar corner, but again you can just see the small differences between the two cars as shown here in slow motion, so you can really see the differences of the two cars there. Plus then you get into the gear shift, as you can see now, and the single seater having paddle shift. So I really hope you guys have enjoyed this video and it's something a little bit different. If you have, please leave a like and subscribe to this channel. There'll be much more of this kind of thing to come, and never be afraid to leave a comment below. See you guys soon.